You're overworked and overwhelmed. You've got a handful of new RBTs who need onboarding, parents on your caseload who seem impossible to engage, and a mountain of other tasks demanding your attention. The session notes are piling up, emails keep coming in, and you're barely keeping your head above water. Meanwhile, your staff and families all have different skill levels, and every day feels like a new race to figure out how to meet them where they are. You've tried providing feedback in the moment during supervision or parent training, hoping it will stick. You've attempted quick demonstrations and explanations between sessions, but that's not enough. You know you should be using the BST model, breaking skills into steps, modeling, role playing, but let's face it, who has the time to do a full didactic training for every staff member and every parent? And coming up with new ways to teach the same strategies over and over, that's exhausting. You feel like you're always behind, never ahead. Now imagine this. Instead of scrambling to teach everyone individually, you've built a library of engaging on-demand training modules tailored to meet your staff and families where they are. Your RBTs get the training they need, parents feel empowered, and you finally have time to focus on everything else on your plate. What would that feel like for you? What would it do for your confidence? How would it help your clients and your sanity? Let's face it, BST is one of the most effective training models that we have, but it's also one of the most time consuming. Between onboarding new RBTs, training parents, and supervising staff, finding the time to fit all the BST steps into your routine, it feels impossible. On top of that, your audience is never the same. Staff come with different levels of experience. Parents have varying levels of engagement, and the skills you're teaching have to be adapted over and over again to meet their needs. It's no wonder you feel overwhelmed. Training in the moment might seem like a quick fix, but without a structured approach, it doesn't stick. And trying to come up with new ways to teach the same concepts every time, it's just exhausting and inefficient. This course is here to help you change that. By the end of this course, you're going to walk away with practical evidence-based strategies to make BST faster, easier, and more effective. Specifically, you're going to learn how to streamline the didactic component of your BST by using interactive on-demand training modules that we call PSI, Personalized Systems of Instruction. You're going to be able to break down complex skills into actionable steps that meet the needs of individual and diverse learners. You're going to be able to develop engaging, reusable training content that saves time and creates lasting results. You're going to build a library of interactive training modules that empower your staff and families while lightening your workload. This isn't just about making BST work. It's about transforming the way you approach training altogether. But I'm getting ahead of myself. For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Amelia Delphonse. I am a BCBA and I co-founded Master ABA with my twin sister, Diana Kelly. Through Master ABA, we help BCBAs gain confidence in their skills so they can have a greater impact with their learners. Our focus is on ethical, compassionate, learner-centered practices. This course is eligible for CEUs. You must watch the video all the way to the end. Listen for code words throughout this training. There will be a short quiz in the mission accomplished lesson, and you must enter the code words in the quiz in order to receive your CEUs. In that mission accomplished lesson, along with the quiz, is a brief survey. We appreciate your feedback because this helps me improve the courses that I'm providing for you. If for some reason you miss a step or have any trouble with your certificate, email me at support@masteraba.com. I'm happy to help you with anything that you need. Before we dive in too far, I want to give you that first code word. That code word is BST. Write it down. You're going to need it for the quiz in that mission accomplished lesson. So again, that first code word is BST. We all know that training isn't just about checking a box. It's about equipping parents and staff with the skills that they need to succeed. But when training is inefficient or it skips key steps in the BST process, it creates a ripple effect of problems. First, staff and parents don't fully understand or apply the skills that are being taught. If the didactic component is rushed or missing, they don't have a clear foundation for what to do. Without modeling, they don't see what success looks like. And without opportunities to practice with feedback, they miss critical moments to refine their skills and build confidence. And second, inconsistent application of strategies leads to poor outcomes. If staff or parents don't fully understand the concepts, they can't implement them correctly with clients. This leads to slower progress, frustration for everyone involved, and a lot more work for you as the BCBA to troubleshoot what's going on later. Finally, it wastes time and resources. When training doesn't stick, you're forced to reteach the same concepts over and over. This leads to burnout for you and the people you're teaching. I'm sure you've had experience with that, where you've had a staff member or even a parent where you just feel like you're teaching the same thing over and over again. It's likely because you've missed one of the steps in the BST process. If you know all of this, and I'm guessing that you do, let me ask you, are you using all 4 of the BST steps consistently? If you're not, we're here to fix that. I know how hard it is because I was there. I knew I should be using evidence-based training practices, but I just wasn't. When I started as a BCBA, I was the clinical director of a small ABA program. I was the only BCBA on staff, which meant I wore a lot of hats. This was before RBT certification was common, so the staff we hired were well-intentioned, but they didn't have the foundational skills that they needed for high-quality ABA implementation. On top of that, the parents hadn't been participating in training regularly with the previous clinical director. There was a gap in their understanding, and many of them felt disconnected from the entire process. I wanted to use evidence-based teaching strategies like BST to get everyone where they needed to be, but the staff and parents weren't all starting from the same place. Some were complete beginners, while others needed to level up their existing skills. They all needed something different, and it was just me trying to figure out how to teach everything to everyone, and it really felt overwhelming. BST is the gold standard for training. I knew that, and I'm sure you know that too. But the reality is implementing BST in its entirety is a significant challenge for busy BCBAs. If you're feeling like I was overwhelmed or like your training isn't as effective as it could be, I want you to know that it's not your fault. First, there's a lack of time. BCBAs are pulled in a million different directions. They have supervision, program development, parent support, data analysis. It's a lot to manage. Finding time for thorough, structured BST feels impossible. Second, there's a lack of resources and training in instructional design. Let's be honest, most of us weren't taught how to create engaging, interactive training during our coursework. We know how to implement evidence-based strategies with clients, but designing training for adults, that's a whole different skill set. Finally, there's a burden of juggling diverse training needs. Every audience is different. Parents, other professionals, teachers, RBTs, all need training that meets them where they are. Trying to individualize for everyone can feel like an endless uphill battle. But here's the thing, you're not failing. Your system just needs an upgrade. With the right tools and strategies, you can streamline the process, save time, and deliver training that works for everyone. We've talked about the challenges you're facing, being overworked, juggling diverse training needs, and feeling like there's no time to do everything. It's no surprise that many BCBAs skip or rush through the steps of BST. Maybe you've thought, I'll just explain the skill during supervision, it's faster, or they'll figure it out with enough practice. But skipping these steps, even with the best intentions, is where things start to fall apart. Let's take a moment to really explore what BST is why it works, and how we can use it to create training that's effective, efficient, and empowering for everyone involved. Behavioral skills training, or BST, is an evidence-based training model that we use widely in ABA. It's structured, systematic, and incredibly effective for teaching new skills to staff, parents, and even our clients. BST is built on 4 core steps. Instruction. During this step, you provide clear, concise explanations of the skill and why it's important. Modeling. You show exactly what the skill looks like when performed correctly. Then you allow time for rehearsal. You give the learner an opportunity to practice the skills in a safe environment. And then finally, the last step is feedback. Deliver immediate specific feedback to fine-tune their performance. The beauty of BST is that it's practical and adaptable. It works for teaching everything from discrete trial teaching to behavior intervention plans. Most of us rely heavily on modeling and feedback, just the 2 steps of BST. I don't know about you, but I often didn't take the time to use the didactic instruction, and I didn't provide a lot of time for them to rehearse or practice the skill outside of a session, because that's non-billable time, and we want to maximize the billable time for all of our staff and clients. BST isn't just a checklist of steps. It's a system rooted in behavioral science. Each step plays a critical role in helping learners acquire and retain new skills. Instruction lays the foundation. Without it, learners don't know what to do or why it matters. Modeling serves as a critical bridge between instruction and practice, giving learners a clear and concrete example of what success looks like. Sarakoff and Sturmy, 2004, demonstrated this in their study, where incorporating modeling into training significantly enhanced staff's ability to implement discrete trial teaching with precision and fidelity. Rehearsal builds fluency. Learners need to practice in a low-stakes environment to refine their skills. And feedback ensures mastery. Immediate constructive feedback helps the learner correct errors and build confidence. BST has been studied over and over again, and the results are consistently impressive. A study by Hogan et al. 2015 found that school staff trained with BST were able to implement behavior intervention plans with far fewer errors compared to those trained with traditional training methods. Sherman, Richardson, and Bedora 2021 showed that educators learning direct instruction components through BST reached high levels of fidelity, even if they didn't have much prior experience. Kirkpatrick et al. 2019 conducted a thorough review of the research, which pulled data from multiple studies and confirmed that BST is effective across a variety of settings. Not only did it improve skill acquisition, but it also led to better long-term maintenance of those skills. What makes all of this so powerful isn't that BST works, it's that it creates better outcomes for everyone involved, staff, parents, and ultimately the clients who we're all here to support. While BST gives us a powerful structure for teaching new skills, it's only part of the equation. The other critical piece is instructional design, or how we plan and deliver the content so it resonates with adult learners. When it comes to instructional design for adults, research highlights 3 core principles. Relevance. Adults want training that's directly tied to their goals and challenges. If they don't see how it applies to them, they're going to tune it out. They're not going to be paying any attention to what you have to say. They want active engagement. Lectures and passive learning just don't cut it. Adults need to interact with the material through practice, problem solving, or discussion. And finally, the third component is building on experience. Adults come into training with their own knowledge and skills. The best instructional design acknowledges that and uses it as a foundation for learning. For example, Hogan et al. 2015 found that tailoring training to meet specific needs of school staff led to fewer errors and better implementation of behavior intervention plans. Similarly, Kirkpatrick et al. 2019 emphasized how scaffolding or layering new information on top of what learners already know helps improve skill retention across diverse settings. But why do these principles work? So let's look at the science. Relevance drives retention. When learners see the connection between training and their real-world experiences and challenges, they're more likely to engage and remember what they learn. We are working with relational frame theory here, making the connection between what you teach and what the person will experience in the real world is the cornerstone of effective teaching. That's why I use frameworks in all of my trainings to provide a step-by-step process for the person taking my training to apply what they're learning to the real world. Active engagement strengthens learning. Research shows that adults retain far more information when they're actively involved in the process. Quizzes, role plays, and problem-solving activities make the material stick. With on-demand content, you need to get creative and with resources that help the student process what is presented in the training. This helps to address a wide range of learning types. I include workbooks, checklists, and guides with all of my online and on-demand training to ensure that students can think through each step of the process. In this training, we are going to talk about some even more creative resources that you can create. And finally, building on experience creates a scaffolding effect where training connects to what learners already know. It helps them integrate new information faster and retain it longer. This again goes back to RFT. Learning is all about making those connections and making them stronger. So the bottom line, the instructional design turns passive training into an active, relevant, and effective experience. And when you combine that with BST, you get a formula for training that actually works. So how do BST and instructional design work together? Think of BST as the structure. It's the step-by-step guide that ensures your training is thorough and evidence-based. Instructional design, on the other hand, is the delivery. It's how you make the training engaging, relevant, and impactful for your audience. When you combine these two approaches, you get training that engages your learner. They're not just listening, they're actively participating in the training. You get training that builds fluency and confidence. Every step of BST reinforces skill development. And it saves you time. By creating reusable, well-designed training modules, you can meet diverse needs without reinventing the wheel every single time. This blend of structure and creativity is what makes training both effective and enjoyable for you and the people that you teach. I was determined to make my role as clinical director work. I knew that there was a way to get everything done and still give everyone the training they needed. That's when I started creating a system. Systems help you become far more effective and efficient. I created a library of reusable, interactive training materials. These weren't just basic PowerPoints or handouts. They were tools I could use to meet different skill levels and use over and over again. Looking back, these materials didn't just save me time, they transformed how I approached training entirely. And that's the foundation of the framework we're about to dive into. I was able to go from overwhelmed to feeling far more confident and successful. Now that we've explored the two core pillars of creating instructional content, BST and instructional design, it's time to bring them together into a practical framework. This framework is designed to make training faster, more effective, and if you can believe it, even fun. It combines the structure of BST with the engagement strategies of instructional design to help you create interactive, on-demand training that works for everyone, whether you're onboarding new RBTs, teaching parents, or leveling up staff skills. And here's how it works. You're going to start by defining the goal. Start with a clear understanding of what you're teaching. Get really clear on the problem you are solving for your audience. You're also going to then identify your audience. This step is critical to ensure that the training meets them where they are. Then you're going to develop core training content. You're going to use the task analysis to map out the scalar concept in a way that's easy to teach. You're going to build the foundation with instructional strategies that align with your learners' needs. Then you're going to build in interactivity and reinforcement into the training. Add elements that engage your learners and keep them motivated. Then you're going to organize all of it into a scalable training library. You're going to create reusable accessible resources, so you're not starting from scratch each time. Over the next section, I'm going to break down each of these steps in detail, and I'm going to show you how to apply them. Then we're going to explore examples of how this all works in real life. The first step in the framework is similar to the first step in what most of you do as a BCBA, and that's defining your training goal. Here's what a strong goal looks like. It's specific. You're going to avoid broad goals like teach staff reinforcement, and instead you're going to focus on something measurable like teaching staff how to identify and implement 3 types of reinforcement. You're going to make the goal actionable. Your goal should be tied to something the learners will do, not just understand. For example, instead of teach parents what functional communication is, we're going to teach them to identify functional communication opportunities and model the appropriate response. And you're going to make it relevant. Make sure the goal addresses an actual problem your audience is facing. So ask yourself, what specific problem is the training you're going to create solving? And what observable skill or behavior should the learner demonstrate after they complete that training? Here are some examples. Something that's too vague is teaching reinforcement. Something that's more specific, teach staff how to identify and apply 3 types of reinforcement during naturalistic teaching. Something that's too vague is to teach parents functional communication. Something that's more specific, teach parents to identify functional communication opportunities and model requesting behavior in 3 everyday routines, such as mealtime, playtime, or getting dressed. Something that's too vague is to train staff on data collection. More specific is to teach staff how to collect accurate ABC data by identifying antecedents, behaviors, and consequences in 5 real or simulated scenarios with 100% accuracy. And the last example, the one that's too vague, is to train teachers to manage problem behavior. Something that's more specific is to teach teachers how to implement proactive strategies to prevent problem behavior by arranging the environment, providing clear instructions, and using differential reinforcement to increase replacement behaviors during group instruction. Now it's your turn. Think of training that you've been meaning to create or a topic that keeps coming up. Maybe it's for onboarding new RBTs or teaching parents a specific strategy. Take a moment to write it down. Write down the problem your training will solve, the specific observable skill your students will demonstrate after completing the training. Here's an example to guide you. The problem might be staff don't understand how to use differential reinforcement during behavior management. The goal would be to teach staff how to correctly identify and implement differential reinforcement of alternative behaviors during 10-minute observation sessions. Once you've written your goal, ask yourself, is it specific? Is it actionable? Is it relevant to my audience's need? Go ahead and pause the video so that you can write this stuff down. If you haven't already, you can download the workbook. There's space in the workbook to write this stuff down, or you can just jot it on a piece of paper or in a notebook. Once you have a goal, the next step is to really understand your audience. Who are you creating this training for, and what do they need from you? Consider the audience's skill level. Are they beginners or who need a lot of guidance, or more advanced learners who need a deeper dive? What's their motivation? What's driving them to learn this skill? Are they new RBTs trying to pass their competency assessment? Are they parents trying to improve their child's communication? And what are their learning preferences? Do they need visual aids, hands-on activities, or opportunities to practice? When you know where your audience is starting from, you can tailor your content to meet them where they are and guide them to where they need to be. Now it's time to think about your audience. For the training goal you just wrote down, answer these questions. Who is your audience? Are they new RBTs, experienced staff, parents? What is their current skill level? Are they beginners, intermediates, advanced skills? What challenges might they face in learning the skill? Do they have a lack of confidence or do they have limited time? How can you tailor your training to meet their specific needs? Can you add visual aids, practice opportunities, or real-world examples? Here's an example. If your audience is a new RBT and their skill level would be beginner, the challenges they might face is that they're overwhelmed with new information and they have a limited experience with behavior plans. You can create the tailored approach by creating step-by-step instructions, a PSI, which we'll talk about later, and video modeling and opportunities for practice. Go ahead and write this down in your workbook. You can pause the video, come back when you're ready. Once you've designed your goal and understood your audience, you're ready to start creating training that hits the mark. Think of these first two steps as the foundation of your training. With a clear goal and deep understanding of your audience, you're going to ensure that your content is focused, relevant, and engaging from the very beginning. In the next step, we're going to take this foundation and start breaking it down the skills or concepts into actionable steps. Okay, so you've defined your goal and identified your audience. The next step is to create the structure of your training, and that's your core content. This is where you teach the what and the why of the skill you're introducing. But here's the catch. Your content isn't just about presenting information. It's about organizing that information in a way that is clear, digestible, and aligned with your audience's needs. The challenge? Adults don't want long lectures or dense slides. They want training that's actionable, relevant, and easy to follow. This is where evidence-based instructional design comes into play, helping you structure your content to meet these goals. Pause here. I'm going to give you your next code word before I forget. Your second code word is core. Write this down so you have it for the quiz. Your second code word is core. One of the most effective ways to organize your core content is by creating a step-by-step framework. If you've taken any of my other courses that I've offered, you're going to see this in all of them. Frameworks make your training actionable. A clear framework helps your audience know exactly what steps to take and in what order. They make your content more memorable. People remember information better when it's presented in a structured, logical sequence. And they help you identify gaps. When you break your content into steps, it's easier to spot where additional resources or tools might come in handy for your audience so that they can implement what you're teaching. Think of a framework as a task analysis of the outcome you want your audience to achieve. It gives your content structure and makes it easier for your audience to apply what they've learned. Here are a few frameworks of how I use, a few examples of how I use frameworks in my own training. So you can use it to teach parents to use reinforcement. It could be broken down into this 5-step framework. The first step is to identify your child's favorite things. You're going to identify the specific behavior you plan to reinforce. Step 3 is to deliver reinforcement immediately. Step 4 is to pair reinforcement with praise. And step 5 is to fade reinforcement as appropriate. So you can see how creating these steps for parents to follow make it more actionable for parents. It also allows you to create some fidelity checklists so that you can ensure that the parents are actually making progress with this. All right, here's another example. Training RBTs to use functional communication training might include these steps. The first step is to watch for the identified triggering situation or precursor behaviors. The second step is to prompt the replacement behavior. The third step is to reinforce that replacement behavior. And step 4 is to collect data, including the prompt level needed to elicit that replacement behavior. All right, here's another example. You could use it to teach school staff to use a task analysis. The first step is to break the skill into steps by completing the task yourself. The second step is to choose the prompting strategy. The third step is to choose the reinforcement strategy. Step 4 is to create opportunities for the learner to practice the skill. And then step 5 is to use the prompting and reinforcement strategies that were identified. Each framework provides a roadmap for the training, making it easier for me to deliver and for my audience to apply. You can use this strategy to break down all of the training you need to do to make it feel more actionable and less overwhelming. Consider the training you need to provide to staff who are pursuing BCBA certification. What if you created a framework for this? Remember, it's critical to understand the end goal for your audience. This isn't about checking the boxes that they've completed their hours or passed the test. The goal here is to become an amazing BCBA who continues to improve the field. You could teach your supervisee to use the following framework. Step 1, learn the fundamentals of ABA. Step 2, use these fundamentals to reduce behavior. Step 3, use these fundamentals to teach skills. Step 4, evaluate the effectiveness of your ABA program. And finally, step 5, understand the various roles of a BCBA. This is actually the framework we use for our Rise Supervision program. We then break each of these steps into a framework, and these are the lessons in each section of the curriculum. Do you think that once a supervisee masters each of these steps, they will have the tools they need to be a great BCBA? Well, it all depends on what the content is, but these are the things that great BCBAs need to understand. The beauty of frameworks is that they don't just make your content actionable, they make your training scalable. Once you've created a framework for a topic, you can reuse it again and again, adapting it slightly for different audiences or settings. For example, the 5-step reinforcement framework that I use for parent training can also work for staff training with minimal adjustments. The FCT framework can be adapted to different replacement behaviors based on the individual learner's needs. So does this sound familiar to you? Frameworks can be generalized. I love being able to tie behavioral principles to everything. Anyway, this saves you time and ensures consistency in how you deliver your training, no matter who your audience is. You just learn to make minor adjustments to meet the needs of the individuals that you're teaching. Now that you've seen how frameworks can simplify and strengthen your training, let's take it a step further. Once you create your framework, you need to develop a plan to teach it. This will be the instruction step for your BST training process. There are a lot of different ways to teach your framework. You can teach it in one-on-one live didactic parent training. You can present it to a group of staff, or you can turn it into an online course like this one. Many of you are comfortable with these different teaching methods, so I'm going to focus on one that you might not be using. It's called a personalized system of instruction, or PSI. This is a powerful tool for creating structured, self-paced modules that integrate seamlessly with the frameworks you've built. PSI takes the concept of a framework and brings it to life in an interactive, learner-friendly format. What makes PSI so effective is its flexibility. It allows your learners to move at their own pace while ensuring they master each step before moving on. This makes it ideal for training parents, teachers, or staff with different starting skill levels. And the best part is, that you probably already have access to everything you need to create one. I'm going to show you two different examples of how PSI can work in real-world ABA. So I've created a hidden objects training for RBTs. This is an interactive module I created to help potential RBTs to prepare for the competency assessment. It's designed to quiz the person studying for the competency assessment. It makes learning the material a little more fun by having learners search for hidden objects within an image. The goal is to make the practice engaging while building fluency in the skills needed to pass the competency assessment. I created it because I found that most people coming to me to take the competency assessment didn't even know what was on it, even when I sent them the document. Okay, so this is the hidden objects PSI that I created for people pursuing RBT certification. You can make this. I'm going to show you how later, but I just wanted to show you what this looks like. So there's a lot of hidden objects and people have to search in the picture. You can see that my cursor changes to a finger when you go over one of the objects. So when you find one of the objects, if you click on it, it takes you to a question. So ABC data helps evaluate the context in which behavior occurs to help identify the maintaining variables. During a functional behavior assessment, you may be asked to collect ABC data. ABC stands for antecedent behavior and consequence. Common antecedents include demands, restricted attention, and restricted access to preferred items. Common consequences include attention in the form of reprimands or verbal redirection, access to preferred items or activities, and so which one of these is the right answer? So I can choose either one. If I click on changes in routine, it says, oh, that's not quite right. And then I have the option to try the question again or return to the library. So if I click try again, it brings me right back to that question. If I click on escape from demands, it gives me some reinforcement. Yes, I did it. My choices are to return to the library or I can exit. So I can go back to the library, find another object, click on it, I get another question. So then I can just keep answering the questions until I find all of the different, oh, that's not right. I can try it again. If I go back to the library, I can just keep on clicking objects until I've found all of the questions. And it's just kind of a fun way to go through, get that feedback, and have fun while learning the things necessary for the competency assessment. So now I'm going to show you the other PSI example that I have for you. This one is intended for parents, but you can also use it with RBTs. This one is a whole lot more fun, at least in my opinion, because this actually combines some of the training with feedback. So you have to click on the image to get started. We're going to click to get started.
In ABA, the verbal operants are functional units of language that help us understand how language develops and functions in different contexts. They represent the different ways that people use language. There are 6 main verbal operants: mans, acts, echoics, intraverbals, textual behavior, and transcription. Identify the verbal operant by the antecedent, or the SD, and the consequence, or the reinforcer, of the verbal behavior. Let me show you what I mean. Demand is a request for an item, activity, or social interaction. The SD is the motivation for the specific stimulus being requested, and the consequence is receiving that stimulus. This is the only verbal operant where the reinforcer is directly tied to the SD. Let's look at an example. Morgan's mother just came home from a business trip. She walks in holding a giant teddy bear. Morgan is excited to see her mom, but she really wants the bear. Morgan says, "Can I have the bear?" Her mother hands her the bear. This is a command. Morgan wants the bear and she requests the bear. She receives the bear, which makes her more likely to repeat this behavior in the future. That's reinforcement. The bear does not need to be present for Morgan's question to be a command. Morgan also does not need to use a full sentence for this to be a command. Morgan could say just bear, and it would still be a command if she wanted the bear and the reinforcer for the word was receiving the bear. Commands can also be non-vocal. Pointing, sign language, PECs, or using an AAC device are all ways to command for something. Identifying the verbal operant is about understanding the antecedents or the SD and the consequence or what reinforces the behavior. Teaching commands requires understanding what the learner is motivated for, identifying how the learner best communicates, creating opportunities, prompting the communication, and providing reinforcement. Here are some ideas for building motivation and creating opportunities. Place items in sight but out of reach or in containers. Make old toys new and interesting by playing with them in new and exciting or interesting ways. For example, a folding table or slide can be used as a giant ramp for a car. If the learner likes cars, this will increase her motivation to ask for the car. Introduce activities that the learner can't do on her own or that require you to perform an action again and again, such as blowing bubbles. Give the learner only a part of what she needs to complete an activity. When giving her toys with multiple parts or edibles, give her only a few pieces at a time to create multiple opportunities to command. Ask questions about attributes such as what color block, or do you want the big cookie or the little cookie?
So you can see this PSI also provides opportunities for a knowledge check. So what is the antecedent or SD for a command? Seeing an object, motivation, or someone else's verbal behavior. So if I click on seeing an object, I'm going to get some feedback. Oops, that's not quite right. So then I can click and go back and I can take it again. If I click on the correct answer, I'm going to get different feedback. So the key to making PSI work is to make sure that you're giving feedback to the learner. So I could go on with this. I think it's a really fun, unique way to provide teaching. And it's actually far easier to create than you might be thinking. I'm going to show you how to do that later. So the PSI that I just showed you explains the verbal operants, the man's, tax, echoics. It provides an example of each. And there are questions to test the parent's understanding of the terminology and to and it provides automatic feedback based on the parent's understanding of the material. So it goes at their own pace and it only moves on once they understand the first concept. So you can only get to the next concept after you pass that knowledge check. So these PSI could also be used for new staff training to help RBTs or other direct care staff understand more complex topics. Verbal behavior and the verbal operants is one of those things that people have a hard time understanding. And having it explained in this way with examples, it's broken down in really simple ways, is a great way to help people understand something that is generally pretty complex. In both examples, the content is concise, interactive, and designed to meet the learner where they are. Imagine if you already had a library of these types of resources ready to go when you needed to train parents or staff about an important concept. I have created one for basic listener skills, play skills, and prompting strategies, in addition to this one on the verbal operants. If you are providing supervision to someone pursuing BCBA certification, creating these is a great project for them. Not only will they end up with a whole library of resources, but they have to demonstrate an understanding of the concept in order to be able to create the training. These are very easy to create, and like I said, I'm going to show you a little bit later. Let's face it, passive training just doesn't work. Adults need to engage with the material and not just sit back and listen to somebody lecturing. Research consistently shows that interactive training improves retention, motivation, and skill mastery. For example, Kirkpatrick et al. 2019 found that incorporating active engagement strategies into training significantly improves skill acquisition and maintenance. Hogan et al. 2015 showed that school staff who participated in interactive practice-based training made fewer errors when implementing behavior intervention plans. But interactivity alone isn't enough. To create training that truly sticks, we also need to embed feedback and reinforcement. For instance, Sherman et al. 2021 demonstrated that reinforcement, such as immediate feedback during training, helps build fluency and confidence in educators implementing direct instruction strategies. When you combine interactivity with feedback, you're creating a training experience that's both engaging and effective, supported by research across settings and populations. So beyond the PSI that we've already talked about, how do you make your training interactive? Here are some few ideas. You can add quizzes and knowledge checks, including quick, low-pressure quizzes throughout your training to reinforce key concepts and help learners test their understanding. You can add simulations and role plays. You can give learners a chance to practice in real life scenarios. Like you could practice running a behavior plan or using differential reinforcement. You can add games or activities to your training. You could add elements like drag and drop tasks, matching exercises, or interactive videos to make learning more engaging. For example, in my hidden objects training, the students search for questions in the image. This keeps them actively engaged while building the fluency of the skills needed to pass their RBT competency assessment. Reinforcement isn't just for clients. It's just as important for adults when you're providing training. Think about it. What motivates you to keep going during a challenging task? Might be recognition, feedback, or a clear sense of progress that towards your end goal. Here's how to embed reinforcement into your training. You can provide immediate feedback. When learners complete a quiz or activity, provide feedback that reinforces what they did well and corrects any errors that they might have. You saw that in the PSI that I created. Progress tracking. Use progress bars, milestones, or gamification elements like badges to show learners how far they've come. That requires a higher level of a platform, but if you have access to a platform that provides that, it's a great way to help keep your learners engaged. And you can provide real world rewards. Tie the training back to outcomes that they care about. For example, highlight how mastering a skill will make their job easier or improve client outcomes. It's really helpful if you can solve an immediate problem for a parent. That will really get them focused on learning a specific strategy. I want to take a closer look at how PSI can bring interactivity to and reinforcement to your training. So in the hidden objects competency training, I added interactive elements. The learners were actively searching for hidden steps, and it keeps them engaged while mastering those important skills. It provides immediate reinforcement after each activity, highlighting correct answers and guiding them when they've made an error. So I'm going to show you how I made this now, so that you can make them on your own. I use Keynote. It's very similar in PowerPoint. I'm just much more proficient in Keynote. So you'll have to make some adjustments if you're using PowerPoint. This is what the Keynote looks like for the RBT the RBT competency hidden objects practice document. It's just an image that I pulled off of a website. I thought it was cool. I wanted to find something that was kind of busy with a lot of different pictures in it, so that it gave me a lot of clickable space to add in the questions. So then all I did was I created invisible shapes. So if you add in a shape, and I think I just made them all rectangles. So if I wanted to make this object right here clickable, I would just put in a shape that covers it. And then I would change this so that it had no fill and no border. And all of a sudden we have an invisible shape. And then I can link this shape. I hit Command K to add in a link, and I can link to any slide. I don't currently have a question for this object, so I'm not going to actually add in a link, but that's how it's done. So I have essentially what I did was I started with a blank picture. I added in the questions. I don't know how many questions I have. Quite a few. I think maybe 20. There's one for each step in the RBT competency assessment, or for each skill in the assessment. So I just simply created one slide with the text box for the question and a box for each answer. And I just duplicated that slide over and over again. So I just duplicated it. And then I added in a reinforcement slide and a correction slide. So I reused the image for the correction slide, but I used a different image of something that's motivating to me for the reinforcement slide, because I think seeing new nature pictures is motivating for me. I don't know, you can adapt it to the people that you work with to see what's motivating to them, but I think most people like pretty things. So I created a different image for each reinforcement slide, but I did use the same image for the correction slide. Now for these, each of these objects is linked. So if you just hit Command K, I think it might be Control K in PowerPoint, or Command K in PowerPoint. But I'm using a Mac. If you're using a PC, it's going to be, I think, Control K. So this just links to the slide. This one is the correct answer, so it goes to the correct. This is the incorrect answer, so it goes to the incorrect response. And this one is the correct answer, so it's linked to the slide with the correct response, the reinforcement. And that's really all it is. So I've linked each of these to the slide that corresponds with one of the questions. And then on the correct one, they get an opportunity to exit. And so you can see that there's an option to link to exit the slideshow. It's just one of the options. So you can see here, exit slideshow. Okay, now I'm going to show you how you can create the other PSI. It's a little bit more complicated, but the principles are still the same. All right. So this is what the PowerPoint looks like for the PSI. I started by breaking it down. I identified the problem. I needed them to understand the verbal operants. For an RBT, that's more important than for parents, but I was creating this for a parent who really wanted to understand a lot of the the ABA language, but she was having some trouble with the verbal operants because the stuff that's out there doesn't explain it in a way that she could understand. So because this became something that I needed to create, or a resource that would be helpful to a parent, I just created it, and then I'm able to use it again and again. So it solved a specific problem for that parent. It's a little bit more involved than most parents would need, but some parents just want to know. So I added in the images and the text. You can make it look however you want. I happen to like these little characters because they show a little bit of personality and it's fun for me. But you could use images from Google, or you could use whatever images support your teaching. It doesn't have to look like mine. I do have an option. This just says to start the video. I do have a button to click to. So each of these, it's clicked. If you click on it, it'll take you to the next slide. You can also create a click for the entire slide if they just click anywhere on the slide. On the next slide, each of these I have just appear. So I used an animation to make them appear as I talk through the different pieces, because it adds a little bit of interest. It adds a little bit of movement to keep people engaged. So I came up with a script. You know me, I work from a script. If you know me off of these trainings, I work from a script because I get really sidetracked and I will go down all sorts of different rabbit holes. We'll be here for 14 hours and I don't want that to happen to you guys. So that's why I work from a script. Without it, we would be all over the place. The script really helps me. So you don't have to use a script. I use the script. I record myself reading this page, and then I just use timings to have these appear at the appropriate time. So if you use the build order, I want the click to cause the audio to start. So that's why I have that first. So this image is there when you first start the slide. So if I were to start the slide, all you would see is that arrow that says click. So once they click that, it goes away. And you can see that it's set on click. So it only goes away if they actually click. And that starts the audio. And then I have the first group is the confetti. So when you first start it, you saw the confetti pop up. So each of these comes in at a specific time. So I don't remember which one it started with. It probably started with man's. Anyways, so each one of them is set to dissolve in. And then I just set the timing down here with a delay. Oh, actually, these don't have a delay because it just so happens that in the when I'm reading it, I'm literally just listing it. So they didn't need a delay. I'll show you on another slide what the delays look like. And then once this last one comes up, I have the pop, I have the arrow pop back up, and it comes in after the last one, the transcription. So the arrow pops back up, and here's where you can see a delay. I had to set the delay at 0.7 seconds so that it lined up with the end of what I was saying. And then just repeated the process. So I like to break things down visually for people. So I have more slides so that I can do that more easily. So really all that's on this slide is just this little piece. And that allows me to add in the lines separately. So this one is, it's all one chart. And you can see when we get, I didn't go into the training to show you, but in future slides, I gray out the ones that we've already talked about and just highlight. So it's essentially, I created the chart on one slide and I duplicated it and I just deleted the rows I didn't want to show and then grayed out the text on these. Again, I have the arrow disappear and come back up at the end so that they know to click. The clicking keeps them engaged and paying attention. That way they can't just tune it out and be doing something else, playing on their phone or whatever. They have to be watching for the click. And you can see each slide is only a couple of seconds. So they really need to be paying attention. There's not enough time on any one slide for them to pick up their phone and start scrolling Facebook or be playing a game while they're also doing this. They are really forced to do this and pay attention. I've added movement into them. It's really, really easy to do it. Again, I just used there's a couple of different free websites where you can go and get these different graphics. I didn't create them. I just use them. These are royalty free. We also have Canva where we could create them. And these characters, we purchased a program called People Builder. And it allows me to create different characters with different facial expressions, body positions, and things. And for my characters and my personality, this fits me. But again, you can use whatever images and things you want. But I wanted to be able to use some motion to demonstrate what I was talking about. So this is a simple animation. So when you click on animate, I'm not building it in and I'm not building it out. The bear already is there. So it's just staying there. It just has a movement. So essentially when I create a movement, I start at a point and I drag it to the end point, and that's how you create the movement. And so I use the timing, and you can see, so once this appears, can I have the bear? There's a delay of 1.25 seconds, and this is based on the audio that I created. So usually what I'll do is if you control click on the audio, you can edit the recording. And so I usually preview the recording so that I can see what the timestamp is up here.
Morgan's mother just came home from a business trip. She walks in holding a giant teddy bear.
So I'd listen until I can get to the place where she says, can I have the bear? And then listen to the rest of the clip so that I can see when I would want it to move. That's when I add in the delay. So I just subtract the time. Hopefully that makes sense. It takes a little bit of practice to get this down to a place where that's happening pretty quickly. You don't have to get it as complicated as this. You can do it pretty simply and still create a lot of interest. For me, it's kind of fun trying to figure out how I can creatively display some of this. And again, I just added in some elements. This one actually builds out the bear. So the bear dissolves, it disappears, because in this slide, this is where I say that the bear doesn't have to be present for Morgan's question to be a manned. So at that time, 0.4 seconds into me speaking, the bear disappears to highlight that it doesn't have to be there, rather than just having the mom there without the bear. For me, that seemed like it would be a better example of it. And then I have these set to appear and disappear as I talk. I could have put these each on a different slide, but then I would have to record each slide still separately. So sometimes it's easier, sometimes it just feels like more work, whatever works for you. And then these are my feedback slides. So I have a video that I recorded. It's literally just a keynote that I created where this text appears, and this character, our little ninja guy, he drops down. And I've added in a sound that appears on the slide transitions. So, because on each slide, if I click on the slide, you can add in a transition effect. So and then for this one, it's the same thing. It's just a video that I created from a PowerPoint of our little popping out. And I just thought it would be fun to have some sort of oops and some flames, because the flames sounded like fun. And again, just with the sound effects, there are websites where you can, if you Google free sound effects, you're going to find some websites where you can download those. I thought that just made it a little bit more fun and interesting. And I just added more questions. These questions are just done just the same as the RBT competency assessment. I just give 3 options instead of 2. You can give as many options as you want, and you just need to make sure that the text is linked to the correct page. So if I Command K, I just need to make sure that it's connected to the right slide. Now, I have different feedback ones created for each one, because the next slide, so this pops up, the next slide is going to be different based on the question that they're, or where they are in the presentation. So I needed this one to go to the next question. So it has to be different than this feedback slide, even though it's correct. So I just duplicated it so that I could link to the correct or the corresponding slide. And I just continued to go through all of this. Using different examples. Echoics. How to teach echoics. And I sequenced it in the order that was kind of most important for my audience. You know, because it's also kind of the sequence that we teach. So you wouldn't need to necessarily go through all of these. It's really just a matter of what your individual learner needs. If I had somebody that I wanted to go through and just focus on man training and tacting and echoics, for example, I could make a copy of this document and just delete the slides that are related to the verbal operants that they don't need to know. So I can just repurpose the whole thing. And at the end, this is just another video. Just to give them a little bit of reinforcement at the end. They did it. I like the fireworks. And then this end is just linked to ending the slideshow. So that's a really quick overview. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit more time involved than the hidden objects one. It takes a little bit of time to record the information for each slide, but I think it adds so much value because that's where the instruction happens. But if you think about it, if it takes you an hour or 2 hours to create this training, you're then going to be able to use it over and over again for anyone who needs to use or needs to learn this information. So you could see how each of the PSI combines active engagement with meaningful reinforcement to create the training experience that people who are taking it actually really enjoy. By adding interactivity and reinforcement to your training, you're not just delivering information, you're creating an experience. You're keeping learners engaged, building their confidence, and motivating them to keep going. In the next step, I'm going to show you how to pull all this together into a reusable training library. So you can create training once and then use it for years to come. Imagine never having to reinvent the wheel every time you needed to train someone. That's the power of a training library. A well-organized library saves you time. You create the module once and it's ready to use whenever you need it. It ensures consistency. Everyone gets the same high quality training, whether it's the first staff member or the 50th and you're burned out. And it's supports scalability. As your team and client base grows, your training library grows with it without adding to your workload. Building a training library might sound overwhelming, but it's simpler than you think. So here's the step-by-step process. You're going to start with your most needed trainings. Think about the topics that you're teaching most often, like reinforcement, functional communication, or data collection. These are great places to start. Organize your trainings by audience and topic. Create folders or categories for parents, RBTs, teachers, or other groups that you train. Within each folder, organized by topic, such as reinforcement or behavior intervention plans. You can have one training in multiple different folders in your computer, so that way you can repurpose it for lots of different people if it's an appropriate topic. And you're going to create reusable modules. Focus on creating interactive, self-paced modules that are using PSI. These modules can be then repurposed across different groups with just minor tweaks or adjustments. And then use digital storage and delivery. You can store your training materials in a central location like Google Drive, Dropbox, or a learning management system so that they're easy to access whenever you need it. So here's an example of what your training library might look like. You might have a parent training folder that includes subfolders for reinforcement basics, functional communication strategies, and managing problem behavior. And in those folders, you can then include different trainings and different resources around that topic. Your RBT training folder might include competency assessment materials like the hidden objects module, a task analysis for naturalistic teaching, or ABC data collection resources. And your teacher training folder might include implementing behavior intervention plans and strategies for classroom management. Each folder includes interactive modules, practice activities, and supporting resources like different handouts, cheat sheets, or workbooks. This structure keeps everything organized, scalable, and ready to use at a moment's notice. What does it look like when you're onboarding a new RBT or teaching a parent about reinforcement for the 10th time in the same month? Do you pull together resources from scratch, tweak handouts, or explain the same concepts over and over again? What would it be like if you had a training library just ready to go? Everything's organized, you have modules, handouts, videos, and you just pull what you need. It's consistent, it's efficient, and it saves you hours of time. That's the power of a training library. It's not just a convenience, it's a game changer. This is completely manageable, even with your crazy busy schedule. Build just one piece at a time as you need it. Then you can use it again and again when that need comes up. And the best part, as part of this course, I'm going to give you access to the library of PSI that I already have created. I've also included PowerPoints that I created as part of my group parent training program. You can adjust and change them to fit the needs of your individual staff or parents. And you can convert the PowerPoints into PSI by adding interactive elements that we just talked about. You can use them with parents, staff, teachers, or other professionals. All that I ask is that you don't sell any of these as your own. I really spent a lot of time creating all these resources that I'm sharing with you. So please don't sell any of them as your own. So now that you have access to my library of PSI and parent training PowerPoints, you can adapt these resources, you can build on them, and you can make them your own. I want to look at an example of how you can continue to build your library. So imagine that you're onboarding new RBTs and you realize that they're struggling to understand how to use differential reinforcement effectively. You want to create a training that doesn't just explain DRA, DRO, and DRI and what they are, but it actually helps them apply these concepts during sessions. Here's what that might look like. So first, you're going to define your goal. You're going to teach the RBTs how to identify and apply DRO, DRA, and DRI in naturalistic teaching. Next, you're going to outline clear steps to break down the skill. So what this might look like is review the behavior plan and observe replacement behaviors. They might have to deliver reinforcement for the replacement behavior. Then they would need to respond to the behavior targeted for decrease according to the plan. And they're going to then need to collect data on both behaviors. And they're going to need to communicate progress and challenges with the BCBA. So those are the steps. Then you're going to create your core content that you're going to use to teach the framework that you developed. Then you're going to build interactive modules using the techniques we've discussed. Maybe a matching activity for definitions, video demonstrations, and a quiz for practice. Finally, save the module to your training library so it's ready to use again whenever a new hire needs it. This is the framework in action, helping you build and move from identifying a need to creating a reusable resource that's interactive, effective, and ready to go when you need it. As with any training or intervention, applying this framework isn't always smooth sailing. Let's talk about some of the most common barriers you might face, and more importantly, how to overcome them. The first barrier is lack of time. The challenge is that you and your team might feel like there's never enough time to create or implement training effectively. So here's the solution to that. You're going to have to start small. Focus on creating one high priority module at a time. For example, instead of building a full PSI library all at once, begin with a single training that you need in the moment and scale from there. Like I said earlier, it's a great way for people pursuing BCBA certification to get in those unrestricted activities as well. So you can capitalize on those opportunities as well. Barrier 2 is resistance from staff or parents. Some people may feel very overwhelmed, uninterested, or even resistant to training, and that's okay. Focus on building relationships before insisting on training. Before you become their partner and focus on their personal goals. Make training relevant to them and engaging. Use interactive elements and explain how mastering the skills will benefit their work or family life. Reinforce their participation with encouragement and recognition of their progress. The final barrier is inconsistent implementation. Staff or parents may struggle to consistently apply what they've learned in real world settings. So the solution to this is to use the rest of the steps of behavioral skills training to ensure that learners have opportunities to practice and receive feedback. You need to follow up with regular supervision and coaching to reinforce skills. Training doesn't happen just one time, and the didactic part of the training is just the first stop to make sure that they have a solid foundation. I have a few more practical strategies to help you get past the most common barriers. These aren't big, complicated changes. They're just small tweaks or adjustments that you can make that have a big impact on your training. So make sure to block out time for creating these trainings. I know your schedule is packed, but even if you just spend 30 minutes a week, it can add up. Set aside a little time to chip away at building or refining your training library. Think of it as an investment. You're going to save so much time later on. You need to build buy-in. Sometimes the people we're training feel like, oh, great, another training. I don't have time for this. That's why it's so important to explain the why behind the training. Show them how this training will make their lives easier or help them get better results. And make it flexible. You need to be flexible when you're creating trainings. Not everyone has the same schedule or learning pace, and that's okay. The PSI modules are actually perfect for this kind of obstacle. They're self-paced, they're flexible, and they're ready whenever they are. They can do it whenever they have the time. Then finally, celebrate small wins. Don't underestimate the power of recognition, whether it's simply great job in passing or completing the training, a shout out in a meeting, or even a certificate of completion. People thrive on reinforcement just like our clients do. I want to make sure you have the final code word so you can get your certificate. Your last code word is instructional design. Make sure to jot it down so you can complete the quiz in the final lesson and earn your certificate. Now it's time to take action. I want to recap the steps really fast so that they're fresh in your mind before you leave here. The first step is to define your goal. Get clear on what you're teaching and what the result is or the problem that you're solving. Identify your audience. Make sure your language instructions and content meet the needs of the specific audience you're creating your content for. Then develop your core training content. Organize your material in a way that's concise and engaging. Build interactivity and reinforcement. Add quizzes, activities, and progress tracking to keep learners motivated. And finally, organize a scalable training library. Save your modules in a way that's reusable and easy to access. Now, here's your challenge. Take the first step. Pick one training need, just one, and use this framework to create your first training. It doesn't have to be perfect. Start small and build from there. To make it easier, I've included some of the trainings I have created to help you build your library, but I want you to create something yourself and start building your own momentum. You can create templates and tools. You can create task analysis templates, PSI modules, and reinforcement planner. You can save your resources in Google Drive or Dropbox. You could create a free quiz in something like Kahoot. Remember, the hardest part is starting, but once you do, you'll see just how much time and energy that this framework can actually save you. Thank you for joining me, and I can't wait to hear about the incredible modules you create. Make sure to let me know what you're doing in the comments below. And that wraps it up for today. I hope you walk away with the tools you need to easily incorporate BST into your regular ongoing training. If you're watching this for CEUs, you will need to complete the quiz for this lesson. In that mission accomplished lesson, you will need to enter your BCBA number into that form so that it shows up on your certificate. There's also a brief survey in that form. Please take a minute to complete it and let me know what you thought of this course. It's definitely different than what I've done in the past. This is going to help me improve the courses that I've offered. Make sure to email me with questions at support@masteraba.com. I will get back to you 100% of the time. Thanks for joining me today. I will see you in the comments.